What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso. 12-pack, Jets Falcons, profit exchange, dropping this Saturday, the day before kickoff. Also available on our YouTube, which you should check out if you have not yet. Been nice to see the views there. Rather than do just game-specific predictions for this riveting over-under 33.5 game, I'll do some. I'll also talk about just some broader predictions for the rest of the Jet season and some stuff looking towards next offseason. As a reminder, Lot E23, 9:30 to 12, Chitty's Cheesesteaks, Profit Exchange, Badlands, TOJ crew, hanging out, commiserating, drinking, cheesesteaks, free bets, making the best of a bad situation. I am going to the game, my first time going since week one. Why not? I'm going to be there anyway. Going to be an interesting one, and I'm curious to see what that energy and mood is like in the building and on the sideline for the Jets, who are actually only 1.5 point underdogs in this game, which feels low with Boyle starting again. Atlanta's a weird team. I wouldn't say they're the best coach team, but they can run the hell out of the football. They have a pretty good defense, opportunistic defense. Jesse Bates, a longtime favorite free agent target here, is having a great season. Ritter's bad. He's going to turn the football over, but he could run a little bit. Atlanta's got talent, and they're probably the favorite to win the NFC South at this point. It's a big game for them. This has all the makings of a quick-moving, low-scoring game. And we say that a lot here, but especially with these teams. I would have to imagine Atlanta looks at the Jets defense and says, look, there is no reason to put this game in Ritter's hand. Let's just run the hell out of the football. Where the Jets have struggled a little bit since they lost Al Woods, and keep the clock moving. And then defensively, the Jets, just let the Jets beat themselves. They can't do much. All three running backs are questionable. I have a feeling like they're going to go. I just think they're all a little banged up, but curious how they divide the workload between Brees, between Izzy, if he gets a chance, and between Dalvin Cook. Offensive line should be getting Wes and Becton back, which will help a little bit, but in the passing game, there's just so many limitations. I'm sure Atlanta is going to concentrate on taking away Garrett Wilson. And, opposite him, I don't know any particular reason why you'd go back to Lazard. I think give Brownlee another chance to just be the starting receiver opposite Garrett Wilson and see what he can do. That will probably be sort of your main three again with Wilson, Brownlee, Gibson. Maybe they mix Cobb in a little bit and Charles in a little bit, but it's not pretty out there. And Boyle was a different shade of terrible. Zach Wilson was very bad the last 4 games before he got benched. Boyle was very bad. That game ended on that ridiculous Hail Mary play, and most of the second half was really just deep garbage time. This game will probably be closer, I would guess. Atlanta doesn't have that kind of offense that's going to pull away. I would expect a lot of drives that are very run heavy. So again, the clock should be moving in this one, which is a positive thing. But it has that 13-9 energy. See a lot of field goals in this game. The Jets, I'd be shocked if they scored more than one offensive touchdown. That seems like the bar right now. So it's really just a matter of how many field goals they could get. It's not a hopeless matchup. Atlanta is not as good as Miami or Buffalo, 2 teams who sort of blew the doors off the Jets. They're more in the Raiders range, and the Jets were right there with a chance to win that game. They just turned the football over late and made a couple too many mistakes. So it wouldn't shock me if this game was close and competitive in the fourth quarter. And of course, if the Jets win this, the Aaron Rodgers returning buzz will be insane, even though at 5-7, the Jets are still pretty far out of it. Really, they're closer to a top 3 pick than they are to a wild card spot right now, even with all the losing around them in the AFC. So it's a tough game from a betting perspective. The under always remains a safe bet. Greg Zuerlein's field goal overs remain a safe bet. Atlanta kicking a lot of field goals feels like a safe bet in this one. I could see the Falcons chewing up a lot of yards, but due to Riddler being pretty mediocre, not being able to get over the hump and get into the end zone against the Jets defense, who, is due to will force a couple turnovers here or there. They did a good job of that against Miami. Hopefully they can do that again here. So we'll see. This is also the time of the year where understandably big chunks of the fan base are going to be either rooting for a loss or okay with a loss because of what it does for the potential draft positioning for the Jets. I'm just curious to see how much have they really kind of quit on this coaching staff? If they go out and just get totally steamrolled at home by a pretty average Atlanta team, it's going to be interesting to see how these final six go and who can and can't survive that. Or do they come out after a bit of an extended break and play a better game and are competitive into the end against a team who has some, pretty serious limitations? I'm going to pick Atlanta like 13-9. The under is what I would feel safe betting in this game. The first half under, the field goal overs. I'm a little scared to touch some Brees props because of his availability, but I do like the odds on our anytime touchdown and profit exchange on the best odds you're going to get anywhere. And if the Jets score, it's most likely to be Brees Hall. The Garrett Wilson, Drake London head-to-head prop we have on profits, and it's a nice one too because Wilson still, despite some of his struggles and his drops, like he's gets 5, 6, 7 catches every game, and he had a touchdown last week, even though it was garbage time. So he'll be involved in the offense no matter what. I think this is probably the last game Boyle starts. My guess is the Jets lose like 13-9. Boyle's bad, and they go to Simeon next week, but nothing ever surprises me with this team. Bigger picture, they agreed to part ways with Adrian Amos. I wouldn't read too much into this. I think he's a veteran who's trying to latch on to a contender, and the Jets just would rather play Ashton Davis and Tony Adams. Ashton Davis has actually been pretty good this year for a guy we've been critical of in the past. He looks totally fine as a borderline starter, backup safety. So I get just playing the young guys down the stretch, and we'll see who else gets shut down and not shut down in these final, few weeks when for the most part, the Jets are really just playing out the string. And we'll start looking ahead to what, once again, will be a critical offseason. I asked a question on Twitter last night. How many new offensive starters do you think the Jets need? A lot of people, 5, 6, 7. You try to be realistic, right? No team is going to replace 5, 6, 7 starters on one unit in a single offseason, even though the Jets have some cap flexibility. I look at it at a bare minimum. You need a starting receiver opposite Garrett Wilson. We know their plan A is going to be Devontae Adams. If it's not Devontae Adams, does that happen through the draft? Of the three of T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, does one shake free? Because again, remember, a lot of times in free agency, people just stay put. If they don't get Devontae, can they pivot to one of those? But they need a top-end starter to go next to Garrett Wilson. That's how thin they are at receiver. They really need another receiver, preferably a guy with some speed who can be, a situational player and a backup. And then you hope out of Brownlee and Gibson, you have another backup. And then for Lazard, can he be a role player next year with Rodgers? Can he give you 25 snaps a game? And could that round out your group? And then on the offensive line, unquestionably going to need a starting tackle. Probably going to need another interior offensive lineman, or at least a Schweitzer type who has started before. You figure Tippmann and AVT are back at starters. And then of Becton, Carter Warren, who hopefully could close the season strong, Schweitzer, McGovern, Tomlinson, maybe one of those guys is back as a starter, and maybe one is back as a backup, and then you go get another guy who can compete. There's only so many starting offensive linemen you're going to be able to get your hands on in one offseason. I'd love a tight end if they added someone who's a little more dynamic. Again, how many things can you do in one offseason? They're okay at tight end. It's not unplayably bad. They're just very average and not explosive overall. So that's kind of what I think of when I look at that unit. And the Jets haven't been shy, again, about how aggressive they're going to be. They don't have a choice because these guys are going to be win or get fired next year, because I do still think they all will be back. And I don't really expect any, other major changes. I think the Jets it took a while, but they've kind of finally hit all the buttons, right? They benched Uzomah, they benched Lazard. They're playing Gibson and Brownlee. Maybe they start playing Izzy a little more. They made the quarterback change. At this point, I don't think they're changing play callers. So they've hit all the buttons. And now it's just a matter of, pride. And is this team going to just lay down and keep getting punked like they did the last 2 weeks, where they're losing and then losing fights during the game and guys are getting thrown out? It's been ugly hours. I don't think it'll be quite as ugly these next 2 weeks. I think these have the makings of games that will be close. And the kind of game as a fan where you're I want them to lose. And then they come out they're winning 10-7 in the third. And you're maybe it wouldn't be terrible if they win and then they lose anyway. That's kind of what I could see happening with these Atlanta and Houston games. But, in terms of Atlanta, I wouldn't be shocked if they hung around, but I can't in good faith pick the Jets to win right now. I do think they will win another game or two this season. I don't see them losing the season, ending the season on a 10-game losing streak. This might be the one. I think this game, Washington, And New England, of course, will be the 3 to really watch where can they win a game before the season ends. So 33.5 is an over-under is the last I saw. And that is like, man, that's like crazy low for today's NFL, but not crazy low when you're dealing with the Jets. So as a reminder, Lottie 23 tomorrow. Be great to meet everybody. Discord, Patreon. We've been talking all year, so it'll be fun to hang in person, just like it was at the watch party. Connor and I will have post-game therapy, post-game party later tomorrow night after I get back from the game, after Connor wraps SNY. Other guys Thursday, War Room Tuesday night, podcast Wednesday, something on Thursday, another episode kind of like we did. We'll probably keep going with the draft season stuff, but we'll mix in a couple other different things to fill that day. Friday, Buck the Trend, as always, from Dan. His episode this past Friday was awesome, so make sure you give it a listen. Saturday, we'll drop in our 12-pack, and then Sunday's the reaction. And we'll generally stay with that schedule up through the end of the season, and then excited about some of the bigger things we're planning this offseason. So thank you for following on the Patreon. We passed 2,700 patrons this month, which is incredible and humbling and exciting going into the offseason. If you're just discovering us on YouTube, when you only see like parts of episodes, you're like, where's the rest? It's on the Patreon, patreon.com/BadlandsTOJ, where there's daily content and articles and film breakdowns and all that good stuff. And tomorrow, let's see. It's just crazy how quick seasons can slip away and how quick they fell these past 4 weeks. I think when we look back, the Raiders game will probably be looked back as to like when the season like formally ended, but that game and the week 3 Pats game were the two they had to have at this point, because they really should be 6-5 right now. And even if for all their flaws, they would still be right in the mix for a playoff spot. Losing those 2 games, I just think are things they're just not going to be able to come back from. And it's why this is going to be a 6-11 team instead of an 8-9 or a 9-8 team. So thank you everyone for listening. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and we will talk to you tomorrow.